Hello and welcome back to an episode of Brothas-in-law. I'm your host, Corey Taylor, and my other host here tonight is Michael Bradley. We're both prior police officer. I was a state trooper for 7 years, and Mike retired from the Pleasanton, California Police Department after 26 years of service. All right. Tonight, we're going to be talking about racism in policing. Again, this is part 2. And so we thank you for all your comments and everything from talking about racism in policing part 1 of last week's episode. Like always, before we dive into it, like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Let us know your feedbacks, and we'll get into the conversation. And if you like this content of this video, please let us know your thoughts down below. You can hit us up down and below, or hit us up on Facebook or over on Instagram. All right. Without further ado, good to see you again back here, my brother Mike.
All right. Good to be back. I'm glad we have had this discussion about part 2 of racism in police, and obviously that's a huge topic. A lot involved to talk about in that. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
We're gonna try to get some points out and condense it down to about 30 minutes or so. We'll see how much of a challenge that's going to be.
Right.
But we're going to get into it. We had a viewer that asked some questions real quick about one of our shows that we had, and she had some questions relating to how police departments how they may, as a department, deal with racism within their departments. As far as, first of all, she was saying something about how, officers are going to have biases, but what kind of training or what are police departments doing to try to have that officer's biases reframed, or in some kind of way teach that officer whether or not he or she should have those biases. And I could say that from our department, we regularly had something that we call bias training, where they would give us scenarios that would show biases. And number one, we would need to recognize the bias. And number two, explain why that's a bias, as far as us personally, individually, why we think that's a bias. And it really pointed out some biases that officers may have had and they didn't know that they had, and how to deal with that bias. Ultimately, the ultimate goal was obviously to deal with your biases as if they don't exist in a sense. You're going to do your enforcement levels no matter what your biases are. You can't interject your personal biases into what you're doing as far as the technical aspect of it. Mm-hmm. If you're going to do a traffic stop for a stop sign violation on this person, no matter what color they are, you got to do a traffic stop violation, same thing on the next person, no matter what color they are. So you do, I think as an officer, we individually have to check our biases every day when we hit the street. You know what I mean? What do you think of that?
No, you're right on point there. I think we had gone through bias training extensively within our department. Like I said, I think here in Virginia, I think the state police have done a tremendous job on pushing that training. Now, yeah. You can only train, right? You train, you expect that officer to go out and practice what they've been trained to do. But ultimately, when we talk about racism, you're talking about hatred in somebody's heart. You can't regulate that. You can't change the way somebody's heart is. I can tell you policy-wise, you would do this. This is how you conduct it. But if how you are within your heart have that bias or have that racism within you, and you go out here and you try to, that person in the vehicle who happens to be Black, for example, says or does something you don't like because your racism to come out, then you know what, that was that person's heart, right? I mean, you can't legislate racism, right? If that were the case, we wouldn't have none today, right? But you can't do it. It's a sin. It's a sin. It's hatred, right? We can't regulate that. So I don't think it's all, you go through all the training, right? But at the end of the day, that person has to look at themselves. That change has to come from within, right? And you're hoping as a law enforcement, you're hoping that you're selecting the right person with the right type of character. That's why they do background checks on you. Now, again, and I believe one of her questions was too, was like, or to that same, I think on that same line of that question, um, you and I come from bigger departments. I mean, state police here in Virginia is really not that big, but okay. It's only about 2,000 statewide, so
Mhm.
that's not big. That's not a big department, but we're bigger
Mhm.
than a small county that may only have 50 police officers. So I don't know how they train. I would assume with everything going on, a lot of these departments throughout the country have started taking a look at themselves and seeing what
Right.
they need to do to ensure that, hey, if any of our officers come across anybody, any other type of race or anything like that, that they would handle themselves this way, right? And they put their officers through that bias training. Uh, I don't know. I can't speak on the police department in Wyoming and what they do. I can only tell you what I went through with the department I was with here in Virginia. So I hope that answers her question. So
Yeah.
continue on from. I mean, I don't know. I mean, did that make sense? Am I right
Yeah,
or?
it does. It does. She had and I agree with you too on that. I mean, there's bias is such a personal thing that and that's what we mean by when we say an officer has to routinely check his or her biases every day when you on the street. You know what I'm saying? You have to make a conscious effort that is what I'm doing can be looked at. Am I only stopping black people? For instance. You see what I'm saying? Am I only stopping black people? Am I only stopping white people for that matter? Whatever the case may be, you need to consciously make an effort to make sure that's just spread out. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? And I think that, she had also threw piggybacked on there, like what can supervisors do? How are they monitoring their shifts to ensure that there's no bias related in things that their officers are doing? And she had brought up body cams and how they might be used. First of all, we said I love body cams. You know what I'm saying? I can't see doing this job today without one. But that's a tool that supervisors have in our department is on a routine basis. They view series of incidents from each of their officers. It's their responsibility to look at what their officers are doing, knowing who their officers are stopping. You see what I'm saying? Knowing what kind of interactions their officers are having with people, whether it's negative or positive. Supervisors routinely look at body cam videos to see, is this officer only stopping black people? Is this officer only giving tickets to black people? Or is this officer only doing certain things to certain people, no matter whatever race that is? And then the supervisors are pulling those officers aside, and that's their opportunity to point this out to that officer and say, look, I'm looking at your body cam videos and of series of things that you're doing, and this is what I'm noticing. And if you're noticing a pattern of it, then that's something that supervisors can address.
Right.
What do you think?
Yeah, it's the same here. Supervisors go through again. The state has a very extensive program on bias training. So you have the troopers, what we go through, and then you also have the supervisor level, what they go through. Not only bias, what the troopers on the road, but also bias within the department itself, what to look for and things of that nature. So how do you monitor your troopers out there on the road? Well, that's comes from your weekly reporting, right? That every week, every Sunday, we turn in our weekly reports for that week. And the supervisors, you turn you download your well, if you have a car camera, you turn your DVD in. If you have a body camera, I think they got body cameras now. You download the video, and your supervisor reviews your videos, and then it goes up to our division commander, our captain, and she reviews everybody's videos. for our whole division, which is 5 or 6 area offices. She reviews everybody's video, and she is very, very meticulous on what she's looking for. Right. So there are checks and balances in play. Now, whether the people do that is another story, right? But I can say that there are checks and balances in play for to mitigate these incidents. I mean, we're flawed people, like I've said before, and we as human beings, we're gonna make mistakes, and we're gonna do things that that just aren't right. I mean, we're flawed. We are not perfect people. But what we do is set things in place so that you help mitigate these things. Say, like, just like, staying calm, right? We're teaching people how to stay calm, right? It's not guaranteeing that, you're not going to get snatched about the car, but at the same time, we're trying to help mitigate you taking the incident any farther. Because at the end of the day, when these incidents happen on the road, first thing people want to say, it's a racial thing. It just so happens that officer had to be black. Now, why don't more black people become police officers? Well, it's a tough process to get through, and let's be frank, a lot of blacks can't get hired on because of their past history, felonies and things like that. Some guys might have got their leg together and wanted, to become a police officer, but because of their background, drugs or whatever, they can't do it. Right. So
true. And I will agree with that. However, I will say I'm glad you brought that up, because that is something that I would like to see as well too. I think that's one of the very few ways we could try to reduce that perception of racism within the department, or race related things dealing with the police department. I think we need to see more black officers on the force. I mean, like I said before, I think I said this in one of the last shows, the department I worked for was predominantly a white department. For a long time, I was the only black officer on the department, to be fair with you. Not because but they were trying to hire black officers. It wasn't for their lack of trying. They just couldn't get candidates that qualified, that met the qualification to get that far. Now they did, I wasn't the only minority officer there. I was just the only black officer there. We've had minorities, plenty of minorities in the department, but still was predominantly a white department.
Right,
now, you had mentioned that a lot of blacks can't get through the process, but that may be true. But I also want to be careful, because there are a lot of blacks that can get through
I'm not saying they're not. I'm not saying they're not, but I mean, the ones that don't, again, policing, like I said in our very first video, I believe it to be a calling, right? I mean, if this is something that you would never even want to do, then, you're not going to do it. This is something that, people believe wholeheartedly in their hearts that, they want to be a police officer. I don't know why we don't have enough blacks.
I was just getting ready to ask you, why do you think that we don't get a lot of black applicants applying for police bars? Now, I don't know the statistics across the country as far as how many black people are applying for the position of police officer or deputy or whatever it is. But from my experience, one of the things I did was I worked with the recruitment team here in my own department that I retired from. And there just wasn't a lot of black applicants trying to apply for that position. But it can be a good career, good pay, good benefits, everything. Yeah, you have the danger aspect of it. It's not an everyday job like, a 9-to-5 type job. It is definitely a very, specific kind of job that you, like you said, almost have to have a calling for. And you have to be a certain kind of person to do that kind of job. But I always wondered, I think that there's a lot of perception from black people about police, which discourages young black men and women to apply for that position. You see what I'm saying? And that's unfortunate. I don't know how you combat that.
Yeah, I think a lot of youth now being taught that the police are the bad people. Um, and so by that, the young kids growing up nowadays, don't want to be a police officer because they think that, all police officers are bad, and only want to, track down blacks and kill blacks, when we know that's just not true. But if you want to help make a difference, just like, back in the day when they used to say, um, certain races will raise their kids to be doctors and lawyers. You know what? We need to start talking to our kids about not only being doctors and lawyers, but hey, think about a career as a police officer. You want change to happen. Well, you know what? You then run for Congress, then run for a county position where you can have a real impact within the community to help make some of these changes, so you don't have this so-called systemic racism. Well, run for a political office, become a police officer, and then work your way up to be, a captain within the department where you have a position of authority where you can make, certain rules and regulations. Run for a sheriff in a small town where you can dictate to your deputies, their rules of engagement, what they can and cannot do. This is how you impact change. But we have to get out of the mindset and demonize and police as these guys just wake up every day, put on a uniform, and just go out here and just start gunning down black people. When we know that's just not true. No matter how you want to spin it, it just ain't true, right?
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
So
Definitely a false perception that people have, that that the media, with the incidents that they are pushing out to the public, with some of the organizations that are pushing this perception out to the public. That's my only thing. I don't want, the last thing I want people to do is average everyday black folks going out their house to go to work or go to the store, doing regular folk activity stuff. I don't want them to feel that they have to be afraid if they
right,
see a police
right,
pull it up on them. You see
right,
what I'm saying?
right.
It's interesting because we were talking about how, why more black people aren't applying for this position, but with police officers, in spite of what's going on today, as this negative perception is being pushed, it's a good career, and it's definitely an honor. I still look at it as an honorable career to have done.
Oh,
I'm proud to
absolutely.
have been a police officer for the last 26 years, and it was a rewarding job. There's ups and downs to it, just like
Any
anything else. You
profession,
see what
yeah.
I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Any profession has that. But I would really like to see more black cops on the street dealing with people. Your
Mm-hmm.
patrol officer is the first, is 99.9% the first example of a police enforcement or non-enforcement, whatever it is that communities will have contact with. That patrol officer is the first face they will see. Sometimes that's the only face that people will know. You see what I'm saying? And your patrol officer is the one that's going to be dealing firsthand, first line of the problems that are going on the street in the community.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first face you're going to see. That's the one who's going to be dealing with your problems.
Yeah.
Another question, real quick, that this person had is, she was asking those communities where they have a majority of white populations and they have a small percentage of black population. But in those communities, she felt, and she didn't mention any specific communities, but in those communities where there's more police enforcement, or statistically more police contact with people of color in those communities than the white community. Why is that? And how can you address that? And the only thing I could say to that is, I would go to that particular agency that you're talking about that statistically shows that, and put them on the spot. Ask them, get to know them, ask them why their stats show that, and what are they doing about that. So I think that's the question that only that particular agency who has that statistic, they can answer that for you. They should be able to answer that for you. And if they can't, then that sounds like something that a community leaders would have a sit-down meeting with the representatives of that particular police department and discuss that issue. Why is that, and how can we change that? How can we make that better? And I think as leaderships in police departments, that can be another tool for them to look at, which they should already be looking at those kinds of things. I'm sure they are.
I'm sure they are. Yep. Mm-hmm.
And they should be looking at those kinds of things. And that's a way that they can figure out how to address that. Because if they're noticing clearly that this is a one-sided thing, my patrol officers on the street are only stopping 90% of Black people, but only 10% of white people. But we got to sit down and figure that out. Why is this occurring and how can we change that? You see what I'm saying? So I think to put it for her question, just to answer her question, put that back onto that particular agency that you're seeing that. Every police agency has a statistician that works for them. They can pull those stats up for anybody in the community. You know what I'm saying? Any leaders, any neighborhood watch, anything like that, leaders in the community, they can go to their police department and say, I want to see statistics of who we're stopping and why. And if we feel that it's this more than the other, then let's talk about that and address that. Do that with that particular police department.
Yeah, and also too, like say, it's a two-way street. I mean, if as a citizens, if you want to have impact, and you have to take correct actions, check with your local county sheriff's office and see that those sheriffs hold town hall meetings, and go to those town hall meetings and voice your concerns. Hey, this is what we like to see. This is what happened, and put them, like you said, put them on the spot so they answer your questions. This is how we impact change. This is how, because ultimately, like Mike, I've talked before, police departments work for the citizens. All right. We're the police are part of your community, right? And we work for you. The police work for you, right? So you have a right to voice your concerns to those departments, or to the sheriff's department, whatever the case may be. And that's how we rectify these things. If you want to know how they're training their officers, then go and talk to that precinct, because it's not top secret information, right? What their training is, and what some of their policies are, right? It's not top secret information. You ask them, they'll disclose, or they may direct you to their website, whatever the case may be. They'll get you the answers you're looking for. This is how we do it, and we know when what their policies and things are, then this is how you don't like those policies because it's affecting too many Black people. But then, you take the actions to correct those problems and get things changed. Like you said, Mike, with the rest of the city's leaders to affect change. So, but good, that's good, man. Do you want to go back into the young Army lieutenant, or you want to move on to the other what we call negligent discharge in Minnesota, where they call an accident? Now in military we call that an END. Ain't no accident. That was a negligent discharge.
Let's go to the negligent discharge. Real quick, we covered the lieutenant. We explained why we already explained why that's a red flag. There are things about that lieutenant incident that I didn't even realize.
Yeah, there was some other things with that kind of like, all right, dude, you were wrong. I
mean, if you follow, you got the lights and siren on behind you for a mile and a half. That's clearly a red flag that this is not just some guy traveling down the road. As an officer, if I got my lights and siren on for a mile, okay.
Now keep in mind,
this is something different.
And keep in mind,
and then some people were saying about the guns being drawn. Well, a high risk stop, that's a standard thing for guns to be drawn on a high risk stop.
Right.
Now, their tactics were a little different, right? And their tactics were a little different for what a high risk stop looks like in California. But one thing's for sure is when you do a high risk stop, guns are drawn, and that's part of the tactic of a high risk stop. That's not something that's unusual.
Right.
This was a guy traveling down the road. They didn't know what color he was. Definitely, I don't think this is a racial issue at all.
No, not at all.
They didn't know what color he was. He's got tinted windows, blacked out tinted windows. Something that was started off as just a minor traffic violation where he would have been stopped, maybe given a ticket and sent on his way, right? But if you keep going with lights and siren on you for a mile and a half, that's strange. I mean, normal people don't normally do that.
Like I said,
yeah, and I understand that there were several spots along that route that he could have stopped that was lit, well lit.
Like I said,
but that's a little strange.
That happened down the road for me, about 3 miles down the road from where I live, right? Mm-hmm. And it's when you come into town right there, it's well lit. Now he was going westbound. And so, okay, that whole right side of that road right there was nothing but businesses. The little strip mall, plazas, or whatever you want to call them, right there. He passed a fire station. He passed a small Windsor police station right there, which is well lit. He passed that whole lot right there where he could have stopped. Now, what I didn't know was that he was stopped several weeks before this incident here. He was stopped for speeding, and pretty much was trying to get the officer just to let him go with a warning. It's like, no, you 19 miles over the speed limit. I can't let that go. Now it's 35 going through town right there, and if you travel up and down that road right there, everybody knows you don't speed. And so, and that wasn't his first time, because he was going to work that way. So he drives that road often. So he knows that speed limit is 35, but yet you're doing 19 miles over the speed limit. And he wanted the officer to give him a break. Officer said no. And again, that wasn't racial. The officer was very polite and cooperative with him, and gave him his ticket, and he moved on. Right. Yeah. So then he stopped again. So now he's a little hot. Now I see why he was when he looked in the video. But anyway, on to the negligent discharge.
That was, first of all, I mean, that was, of course, that is a tragedy.
Yeah.
That this kid lost his life. Now I'm just going to focus on the officer's actions for a minute here, because that's, we know there's errors on both sides, I think. Mm-hmm. Obviously, you're breaking away. You broke free from the control hold of the officer to try to flee into your car. Yeah, of course, that was a mistake. Now, was it a mistake for him to lose his life over?
No.
It shouldn't have been. No, it shouldn't have been. Let's make that clear. Now, the officer having her gun instead of her taser, here's some questions that I have about that. Number one, was it a mistake? Yeah, a dumb mistake, but it was a mistake. Was it racially motivated? I can't really say that it was racially motivated. I don't see anything there that says she did what she did because the suspect was Black. You see what I'm saying? Now, mistake? Yes, it was a mistake. A crucial mistake? Absolutely a crucial mistake. As an officer, we go through so much training in the use of a taser versus a firearm. We carry our taser. For me, when I was an officer, I carried my taser on the opposite side of where my firearm was. So I was right-handed. My taser was on my left hip. So I had to make a point to cross draw just to grab my taser. So I knew that it was definitely my taser that I was grabbing. And for me, there were times when I would grab my taser with my left hand because I'm right-handed. I would grab it and have to switch hands to my right hand. So how she made that mistake, I just can't understand that. It's especially someone who's been on the job for 26 years. She was a field training officer. I understand. She has 26 years of experience, and a lot of that, if not most of that, was on patrol, from what I understand. So that's a mistake. That whatever happens to her, as far as a punishment goes, I mean, I can't argue with that. Now, do I think it was a murder? Of course not. No, it wasn't murder. Now, what they ended up convicting her with, well, that's yet to be determined. And I just can't. I don't have a lot of what's the word? I'm not trying to defend her in any way. You see what I'm saying? Because it was a mistake. If you make a mistake that takes someone's life, well, you gotta be able to account for that.
But
You know
you
what I'm
got to be
saying?
accountable. Absolutely.
You
Uh,
know, that's
I
my
can't,
thing.
again, one thing we don't like to do is Monday morning quarterback, another officer.
Sure,
But
sure.
at the same time, we have to look at, the the things that led up to this. Now, a lot of time, I would ask the question, you know, to me, has she ever been in a real stressful situation before in her 26 years? What was her whole career like? What did she do? Right. Because if you've been out there that long, and even if you've been in the FTO, because I was an FTO, field training officer, and so I would always try my best to get my trainee into things, so that into
Right.
stressful situations, so they know how to handle themselves or watch me handle the situation. Um, so I would question, her career path, what she's been through, right? Because a lot of times when that happens, in the military, or even in law enforcement, when we get into these situations and our adrenaline is high, we get that tunnel vision,
Right.
right? Could she had gotten so zoned in tunnel vision? Those of you who probably don't know, it's like when your adrenaline gets really pumped up, your vision goes from the wide view into a very narrow view, and you're focused in on that one thing, right? Everything is gone, everything is blocked out. You're just zoned in on that one thing. So could she had gotten tunnel vision to the point where she's thinking she's drawing her taser, and she's actually drawing her weapon, but your mind is so zoned out right now because your adrenaline is so pumped up, and you're so tuned into this guy trying to get away, but you in your head though you still got it. So you're not really thinking about wait. Now keep in mind, I'm not trying to justify what she did. What she still did was still wrong, and this is why in our training I've been through in the military and in law enforcement, we taught combat breathing. Before you go do anything, before you go in that room, you want to bring your adrenaline down a little bit by trying to lower your heart rate a little bit. So you take that
Right.
combat breathe real quick, and then make your move. Now I don't know if she gone through that. I'm trying to figure out possibilities of why she would have mistaken her 9mm for a taser, right? And that's what I think of when I get to that maybe she got tunnel vision. You get so zoned out, you're not really thinking about anything else. Because I tell you, when I was on fights on the side of the road, uh, I didn't hear anything. I couldn't see anything else other than focusing on fighting.
The
Right.
fight. Right.
And so could that had happened? I don't know. But at the end of the day, she will be held accountable for what happened. I mean,
Yeah. And
it's just you can't. There's no. I mean, like I said, I'm very pro police. Will always support police, but when you're wrong, you're wrong. She made a
when you're
wrong.
wrong, you're wrong. Right.
She made.
And I'm still trying to figure out how she came to have the gun in her hand in the first place. Because did she draw her gun thinking it was a taser, or did she think that she was going to grab her taser but just fired her gun? I don't know. I don't know. I can't even answer those questions because, like you
Well,
say, for me and you, that seems like a mistake. I hear what you say. You're right, definitely right about the adrenaline and tunnel vision. You know what I'm saying? But your repeated training in that area is supposed to take over when
right.
you reach that. You know what I'm saying? You
That's right.
always fall back to
On
your
your
level
training,
of training.
right? And like I
Now,
said,
when we go ahead.
like I said in our last video, you train like you fight like you train, right? So
Right.
again, I would say, hey, right, how was our training, right, prior to this? Like I said before in a couple of videos back, I would always, when I was home by myself, I'm doing room clearance, or if I was on midnight shit, I'm back behind the office for a little bit, and just going
Right.
through scenarios and stuff, and I'm always putting myself in a type of scenario where I'm always thinking, I'm always practicing drawing, I'm always practicing put my handcuffs on quick. I'm always doing some type of training, right? Whether I'm doing it with the department or I'm doing it on my own. I was always doing some type of training because you don't want to make any mistakes like this. When you make mistakes, usually somebody's getting hurt, either yourself or the citizen. And in her case, she ended up killing somebody. So again, it's you got to know what's around your waist. You got to know your tool belt. You got to know where your weapons are, right?
Mhm.
We try to set our weapons up so we all look alike, uniform. Obviously, you're gonna be opposite because you got left-handed, right-handed. I was left-handed, so I was always gonna be, opposite. But point being is, you need to know your tool belt. You need to know where everything is on your waist, right? And to me,
Right.
that signifies to me she didn't know. So how much training did she do? And then second of
Yeah,
all,
that's a good point. How much training did she have? I mean,
when
even
you
when we train, we add stress into the training
yes, we
where we'll run for 100 yards,
do.
and then all of a sudden it's all timed or something. You'll run for 100 yards.
Mhm.
Excuse me. And then we'll say, okay, draw your gun, draw your taser, or
Mhm.
whatever it is.
Mhm.
So you have to be mindful of that. I mean, that's a terrible mistake to make.
Yeah.
It is, I don't know, I can't, the only, I can't explain it because that's a mistake obviously we've never made.
Right.
It's a mistake that we can't relate to necessarily because number one, we've never made it, and we know how much training goes into the use of taser.
Now,
So, it is what it is. Whatever consequences she gets, I can't feel sorry for that because it is a position, an incident or mistake that she made as a police officer. And I do understand that as a police officer, you're held to a higher standard than the citizen that was running from you,
right.
for instance. You see
Now,
what I'm saying? That's like,
now let's let's talk about the individual that was shot. I think it was with Mr. Wright.
Mhm.
Now, it was a good traffic stop. We kind of find out the initial report on media, which was wrong, said it was because of dangling object. Now, real quick on dangling object, in majority of the states, you cannot have a dangling object in your rearview mirror. All right, I'll leave that at that. All right, now it seems as though my man was really starting to comply. Right, he was out the car. Now,
Yeah, they had it. They looked like they at
initial
least had
stop
him
was
partially handcuffed. Yeah.
the initial, the reason for the stop was the expired tags. But like here in Virginia, when they run the tags, it came back that he had an outstanding warrant for I think something about robbery or something like that.
Yeah. The media said it was a misdemeanor warrant, but I think it was actually a felony warrant.
Yeah, there was a felony warrant for
It was a
robbery.
robbery for robbery,
Yeah,
possession of firearm and robbery or something along those lines.
yeah.
So yeah,
So
it was
that was the reason for the stop. Now, keep in mind, I think everybody keep missing that the arresting officer was black. So he ran the tags. The tags come back that he had this warrant. So the officer had him out the car. Now he was following everything until he made that move to try to flee, and ultimately in his death. Now, again, this is why we teach calm, right? He was staying calm. He was complying because he got out the car and they were getting ready to place him in handcuffs. All he had to do was just continue listening to what they're telling him to do and then move on. And his moving on would have been going to jail, but obviously his moving on is going on to something else now. And so his actions caused her reaction, which was a wrong reaction, which ultimately ended in his death. Right. So this is why we do these videos. You have to stay calm, right?
right. Yeah,
If you have
I agree.
if you committed an offense, all right, the game's up, game's over. If you got to go to jail because you have a warrant, you know what? Go to jail. You now that majority of courts it seems like they're going more liberal now and lenient on uh criminals,
Criminal activity, yeah.
criminal
I agree.
activity. You'll probably be out within a few hours because a lot of states are going to the no bail thing. So you'll probably be out in a couple hours and back out on the street. So
And the only reason why we, some people would say, well, what does his history or what does his him running away doesn't justify him losing his life? Of course not.
Of course not.
We're not saying that. The only reason why we're bringing up his past history of why, so we can, number one, establish that the officers didn't just single him out because he was black. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. They ran his plate for a valid traffic violation, popped up with warrants, which is one of the more common ways that we get people on warrants is through traffic stops. Mm-hmm. So they ran him out and had a warrant. If it wasn't for his action of breaking away and trying to leave, that wouldn't have started that whole chain of events. Mm-hmm. That's the only reason why we're saying that is because when in our show, we do try to tell people, like you said, calm. Don't try to take off. If you got a warrant, go on, just go with the program. You don't want to put an officer in a position to make that kind of mistake.
And that's the premise behind calm.
That's the other side of that coin. People don't want to talk about that, maybe. Right. And I understand that emotionally, they don't want to talk about that because a young man lost his life. I understand that. We're not knocking that.
See, but
we're just trying to point out, like you said, just trying to point out that go with the program, basically. Don't do anything that could cause an officer to misperceive something a different way, that could cause an officer to make a mistake, in this case, a deadly mistake. You see what I'm saying? Because in the end, no matter what happens to this officer, it ain't going to be as bad as this person who lost their life.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
And
no matter what happens to this officer, that life is still lost. You see what I'm saying?
That's the whole point. And that's the whole reason behind calm, like you said, because what we want to do is you want to minimize the risk of an officer having to make a decision. And in this case, it was a wrong, deadly decision. Right now, again, I don't like Monday morning quarterbacking a situation like that. See, when I was on the road, we didn't carry tasers. Right. So I know drawing my service weapon, I would never have done that. Me, I'd probably try to help my man out and probably snatch him out the car. We went straight hands on. And I question that one. Why didn't she just go hands on with him? She knows defensive tactics. Right.
And it looked like one officer was already on him.
Right, he was trying, but I think he backed off because she was yelling taser, taser, taser. So, okay, he don't want to get hit. So he's got to slide out the way. Right. So he had to probably release his grip or hold that he had on so she could go ahead and tase, but then ultimately shot him. Right. So I don't know, why didn't you just go hands on? Got the other officer over there that was on the passenger side. I mean, I would have got the passenger out, detain them real quick and then, try to reach in and grab him or something, try to assist. Like I said, we didn't carry tasers. So that's what we would have probably done. We'd have went hands on, or pepper sprayed them and gain control. Then pepper spray would have been authorized to use to gain control of the situation. So he didn't, try to drive off, but to make that deadly mistake of pulling your weapon out, thinking it's a taser. This is why we say you got to stay calm. Like I said, the game is up. Once you got the car and they telling you why you're about to be placed on arrest, it's over. Handle your business in court. If you did nothing wrong, what you got to run for?
If you did nothing wrong, you take it to court and you argue it in court. Once that officer has made up his or her mind to arrest you, you must go with the program. There is no argument at that point. There is no argument. If I say put your hands behind your back, there is no, oh, never mind. I changed my mind. You ain't got to put your hand. There's
No.
not going to be any of that. Once I've decided to arrest you, then in my mind, I'm going to use whatever force is necessary to get that arrest. And hey, if you just turn around, put your hands behind your back, and that's all I got to do is just go click, click, and I'm good. That's what I want. That's what all officers
That's
want.
all we want. Yep.
Any officer that don't want that or wants something more than that is a cowboy and it ain't got no business being no police officer. None. You know, not that I'm knocking cowboys in the literal sense. You know what I mean? When I say cowboys,
I got you.
You know what I'm saying?
I got you.
But you know, don't stay calm. Don't fight. Don't be argumentative. Just go, okay, officer. Like even if you know that this officer is way wrong, it shouldn't be arresting me. You go on and you be arrested and you take your case up in court. You see what I'm saying? And if you need to turn around and sue the officer, sue the department, sue him. Go ahead. And officers get sued every day. So
sue the department, get your money, and go on vacation.
Go on about your business. At least you have your life.
That's how you need to look at it, right? All right, you know you didn't do nothing wrong. You still comply and staying calm, and you know you're gonna get your payday. Because they're totally wrong, and then that's it. But again, you got these guys that get out here and they just don't want to go back to jail. They know they're wrong. They know they got a warrant. They ain't trying to go to jail. They don't want to go back to jail. And some of them, it's sad to say, probably have it in their heads that they'd rather die than go back to jail.
Some of them do. Some of them actually do have that in their head.
You know what I mean?
You know what? Another, I was just thinking, another question that was posed to us is when you comparing two police incidents where you have one incident on one side of the country where the officers had guns drawn on them or had a suspect doing something dangerous, and then they compare that to an incident another part of the country where the person ended up getting shot, the suspect getting shot. The black suspect gets shot while the white suspect ends up being properly arrested and taken into custody. And oftentimes people want us to compare those incidents and give an answer of why is this black person end up dead while the white person ends up going to jail or whatever the case may be. Comparing two incidents like that is very difficult to do. You got so many variables that come into play that you couldn't answer why this person got shot versus this person didn't get shot in any given situation. There's too many variables that come into play, starting with the officer that's handling the call for service, the mind frame of that particular individual officer, the circumstances that he or she saw in that incident that wasn't in the other incident, or vice versa. That's why you can't really, it's not fair to compare two incidents and say, right, well, the black guy ended up getting shot while the white guy didn't get shot and got arrested. You just can't compare those two incidents like that.
Right.
It doesn't work like that.
Yeah, you can. And I don't see how you can, but then that's the problem we're having. Well, why is this guy here in Pennsylvania get shot and killed, and the guy in Wyoming doesn't? And they both get stopped for, expired tags and registration. Well, again, for me, before I can even try to answer anything, I have to look at the whole stop, from start to finish. Like you said, you don't know what the officer's mind frame was when maybe this guy here in Pennsylvania was combative while the guy over here was complying, was staying calm and complying and doing what he was supposed to do. I think my biggest problem with all this is the media, how they play in everything. Everything has to be race, to the point where people thinking that officers are getting up every morning, putting their uniforms on and just thinking, you know what, how many black people am I going to gun down today? And I had to say, no, that's not true. In my experience, in the road I work with and the folks I work with throughout the department, I can say that's not their mindset when they wake up that morning, because you have to look at what they have to go to. Like this lady, this police officer, she didn't wake up that morning saying, "Oh, I'm gonna go kill this kid. I'm gonna kill me a kid today, a black kid today, young man today." Sorry, she didn't wake up with that mind frame, right? And particularly a black one. She's got kids of her own, right? So why would she purposely want to kill somebody to ruin her own family's life and in her career? I think her husband was a retired police officer as well, right? To purposely ruin, now their lives are ruined because of the incident, but to purposely do it, no. And I can't say that. I mean, who why would you do that? I mean, you couldn't have loved your family then if you want to do this because of that hatred in your heart. I just can't see that. So all
Yeah,
right.
no officer wants to get into a shooting. And
No.
to wrap it up, I guess we need to wrap it up a little bit. I imagine. But real quick, just get to know your police departments. That's the other aspect of it.
Yeah.
A lot of times people go their whole lives and not even know the officer that patrols their particular area.
Yeah.
Get to know that officer that patrols your particular neighborhood. Know his or her name.
Yeah.
Know what shifts, each shift. Know what officers on each shift with your particular neighborhood. A lot of police departments have something called a citizens academy, where you can go through and learn every aspect of your police department in your area and know how they do things, what their statistics are, what their crime statistics are, and all that stuff. You can learn all of those things, how they do certain things. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Get to know your police department. At minimum, know the officers that patrol your area. Yeah. Okay? Know who they are, know about them, know their names, know what they look like, and on each shift that's in your neighborhood. So that's the start of trying to build that relationship with your department.
And don't tell you, and this is my last thing, and we're gonna go. My thing is, and when you see the officers out in your gas station or in your Wawas or whatever you call them throughout the country, your service stations, and to me, don't tell your kids to what would they say? Oh, hey, little Timmy, if you be bad, this officer's gonna come haul you off to jail. Please don't say that, because we want them to run to the officer if they need help, not being running away from them. So please don't tell them that don't teach them that to be good. Well, yes, teach them to be good, but if they do something wrong, don't scare them like that. Is to the police gonna come haul you away, and now they're afraid of other police, right? Those are our future law enforcement officers right there. We need them. So thank you for tuning in. If you like this content of this video, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Make sure you smash that subscribe button down there if this is your first time checking us out. And we'll be back next week with another topic. So stay tuned.
All right.
Have a great weekend.
Peace.
Peace.
All right.